Nu bricht mein Klomp, and welcome to Shift+F1, a podcast about speedy race cars. That, by the way, is Dutch. We're doing Dutch again, because we've got another Italy. You know, this is our only Dutch. That's Dutch for, now my wooden shoe is breaking.
Oh, no. Is wooden shoe just Dutch for clog?
It's Klomp, I believe.
Klomp.
Mein Klomp.
Oh, excuse me.
Oh, okay, well,
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
All right, Drew, we've advertisers now. We have to play it safe.
Well, that means to be totally amazed or not expect something.
I wasn't expecting that. I tell you, fucking Drew's right wing turn coming on episode 240. Buried that one, mate.
Also didn't expect Zandvoort to produce such a crazy race, but I suppose we have the rain to thank for that. I am Drew Scanlon. Joining me, Danny O'Dwyer. How are you, Danny?
I do feel like every time we get to the hey guys, final thoughts for the podcast, and both me and Rob say, God, I just hope it rains. I do feel like we're kind of phoning it in, but yet, were we not right in that the one thing every race really needs, especially Zandvoort, is a little bit of sprinkle. Although I will say, Monza's pretty much without like, I'm gonna knock on wood here. Monza's pretty good, like consistently, I feel like. And even if it's not good, it's Monza. Monza's great. I just love looking at it.
Well, maybe we'll have something special in the weather forecast as well.
Oh, ooh.
Also joining us, Rob Zachney. How are you, Rob?
still riding high from that race. MVP performance from the weather. After a number of sort of disappointing showings. Beautiful to see a return to form for the weather.
Absolutely. If you are new to this podcast, a very warm welcome to you. And if you are new to Formula One itself, we recommend listening to our preseason primer episode, humbly, which assumes no prior F1 knowledge and explains how the sport works and who everybody is. So if you'd like to go back and listen to that, it's episode 216. Also, this show would not be possible without our audience over at patreon.com/shiftf1, where every month we release bonus podcasts and videos exclusively for our patrons that cover racing documentaries and films, F1 video games, experiments with other racing series, and a lot of fun stuff. So if you'd like to go support the show and get access to all that fun stuff, head over to patreon.com/shiftf1 or click the link in the show notes. So what do we have going on this month, Danny?
Well, aside from our beautiful ad-free podcast as well, should be mentioned.
I gotta amend that. Yeah.
Amend the intro. A lot of happy patrons over there with our ad-free podcast. But what we're recording tomorrow is our review of Initial D, the anime, the first 5 episodes of the first season of Initial D. And I mean, I'm only 3 episodes in. I'm loving this madness. It's good. It's a good time. It's not to burn good pod, but I'm like 2D drawing, 3D cars. I'm kind of
mad I missed this.
Let's go.
The fact I somehow did not know this key fact about this.
Me neither.
Is that it's an anime and then it does the MechWarrior TV show thing where it goes from the animation to really raw like CG graphics,
like PS1 baby.
Yeah.
It's real.
It looks like a prototype of Gran Turismo 1.
It does, you're
in
right.
the best possible ways.
I love it. It's like, hey, guess what? We think cars are so good in this universe that they have a whole other dimension to them that we do not.
Is that what the D stands for?
Initial D, exactly. D could mean a lot of things. Find out on our Patreon exclusive podcast pretty soon. And also massive thanks to our incredible title sponsors: Agave ATX, Cyphus Training, Turf SCS, Alex Medina, at Team Blackjack, Michael Maves, Gordy's Army, at Talking Autos, Olivia Evans, TelemetryDeck.com, FTC, Drew Stewart, Beatty Foot, Abdullah Al-Thani, Jason Chadwick, Abraham Getchell, The Space Above Us, Bunny Fiend, Snigs, Alex Goucher, Max Valtar, Circuit Demon, Troy Stammer, Umberto Roca, William Romph, Irvine, Clinical, Research, Lachlan the Maddened Man, and of course Jason Kelly. Thank you all, and thank you to all of our amazing patrons. We'll get that D right over to you ASAP.
Are we sure it's not Jordy's Army?
Geordie's Army. If this person has been a Newcastle fan and I have been mispronouncing that they're the Geordie, like if I would be
Wait, haven't you always been saying Geordie's Army?
Gordie's Army. Haven't I?
Oh, that's so weird. In my
Is this a
head, I was
Bernstein
just turning it into like Geordie Lad.
Geordie, yeah, Geordie's Army. Is it?
I was going with Star Trek: The Next Generation, Geordie.
Geordie, okay.
Which I think is a J.
LeVar Burton.
Yeah.
Geordie for Newcastle people is a GEO, right? I'm pretty sure. So, hey, Gordie's
All
Army,
I know
you're
about
listening?
Geordie's comes from Sailing to Philadelphia, the iconic Mason-Dixon historical ballad by Mark Knopfler.
There's so much Mark Knopfler. Just
Has an amazing
simmering
refrain, in which they say, "We are sailing to Philadelphia to draw the line." The Mason-Dixon line. And that you just hear that so many times. It's like, yeah, they did draw the shit out of that line. Salute,
Did they actually
fellas.
draw a line, though? Like, in real life?
The origin of the Mason-Dixon line is they're settling a border dispute between two colonies.
And they
So
literally
that's
drew a
why
line?
that's-
Like,
Well,
did
no,
he
I
go
don't
out
think
with,
Rand
like,
painted it.
you
No,
know, the
no,
little-
no. Well, they drew it on a map.
Do you guys ever have that, whenever I was, I played football, right, in Europe, and did you ever line a
I can
pitch?
see what you're doing with
Oh,
your
yeah, of
hands.
course.
And yeah,
with
you
the,
are
with the,
miming
did you guys have
pushing
the same,
like a cart with a spray can on the end of it?
Yeah.
is that, so how
Or it's
did
like,
you guys
or it's
do
like
it?
grinding chalk.
So, well, okay, so yours was chalk or a spray can, was it? The one we had for the football team I played for, which was just in a soccer field in a psychiatric hospital, our chant was, "You'll never beat the mental." We had it was like a bucket on wheels that you just filled full of paint. And then, like, so it was loose paint in it, and then the wheel was
Sloshing
rotating.
around.
Yeah.
No, that is
Oh,
not how
got it.
that looked.
So we just
That is
pushed
not
that
how.
shit.
That was it. No, it was like I seem to recall it was like some sort of weird dusting type thing.
Okay.
But yeah, it was weird.
Ours is just like painters, like base coat paint. Just like
Also,
white
I'll be
poured in.
honest, Danny. Like, it is possible. And look, I love Ireland, and I'm proud to be Irish, but the whole island could maybe do with some sensitivity training, based on that little anecdote.
That's not even the. I mean, I grew
Oh
up,
no, I know.
It was I have a lot of stories about that place. It was a good time. It was a great time. I loved it.
Should we talk
Shout
about
out-
Formula One?
I guess.
Wait, you wanted to do a shout out?
Shout out to Saint Otterins. And no, I'm good. Let's talk about Formula One.
Well, we do have a lot of Formula One to get to because we not only have this insane Zandvoort race, but also Monza is coming up next weekend. So
It
our
is.
cup floweth over with Dutch rain, but also race cars. So here's the grid for the Dutch Grand Prix. Max Verstappen, maybe you've heard of him. He's at pole position, although it really kind of came down to the wire there.
Track evolution, baby. It was a lot of it.
It was, but also Charles Leclerc crashed in Q3. He had a hard whack after he just drifted off into the grass, which helped Verstappen since the track had more time to dry. It had been wet, and I was worried that it would hamper the rise of one Alex Albon more by having a dry track that everyone else could outperform him on, but apparently not so much because, check this out, second place, Lando Norris, third place, George Russell, fourth place, Alex Albon, lining up on the grid, has never, I was surprised by this, never qualified in the top 7.
Wow. There you go. I mean, just a mad, just top to bottom. I mean, number one, not mad, but the other three is kind of mad. Lando second and Russell in third. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Hamilton had a bit of a mare.
He really did. Yeah,
yeah.
He said after the session, I really don't know, is from racefans.net. The car didn't feel too great after FP2. It felt great in FP1, and I've just not had that feeling ever since, so I'm not really sure what it is. Said it was just slow. But yeah, let's go down the rest of the grid here. Fernando Alonso lining up 5th, Carlos Sainz in 6th, Sergio Perez 7th, Oscar Piastri in 8th, Charles Leclerc ended up 9th, and Logan Sargent, the other Williams. This is the first time both Williams cars have been in Q3 for the first time since Monza 2017.
Sargent
And he
did
might have
bin
done
his
better if
Williams.
he hadn't.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he
did
that.
crash immediately in Q3.
Immediately.
Yeah.
On his
There's a bit of
outlap, I think,
call lag going on, isn't there?
Is there? I don't know. Maybe we
there's
just
a little bit.
Who knows?
Well, I'm sure Danny will figure it out in post.
Exactly.
Lance Stroll in 11th, Pierre Gasly 12th, Lewis Hamilton 13th, Nico Hulkenberg 14th, Zhou Guanyu 15th, and then Esteban Ocon, Yuki Tsunoda, who was penalized 3 grid places for impeding. I believe it was it Hamilton?
I think I remember the incident, but I forget who it was.
I want to say there were 2 incidents.
Bottas in 18th, Liam Lawson in 19th, which we'll get to in a second, and then Kevin Magnussen in 20th, starting from the pit lane due to multiple power unit element replacements. But yeah, Liam Lawson, a name you may not have heard of, because he's, until this weekend, was not a Formula One driver. He former Formula 2 driver and is currently second in the Super Formula Championship over in Japan. He was at the Grand Prix because he is a Red Bull reserve driver, and learned during the drivers' meeting that he would be replacing Daniel Ricciardo for the race due to Ricciardo injuring his hand in a crash in free practice 2.
Yeah, the crash was interesting. Oscar Piastri lost it on the banked curve, which got a lot of great action all weekend. F2 and F3 had some fantastic, or no, just F2 I think it was, had some great races. He just kind of lost it on the turn, and then Ricciardo was coming in next, but he was coming in kind of hot. The yellow flags had just come up on the boards, but he was sort of carrying speed into it. And essentially he was taking a high line. He was like trying a high line around it, and realized kind of too late, or I guess as early as you'd ever know, that, there's a McLaren parked where I'm supposed to drive. And he just kind of binned it. Like he just went, I have to crash then.
He said he had 2 options, hit Piastri or hit the wall.
And you can tell how quickly he made the decision, because he just kind of braked as he could, shallowed the angle, didn't take his hands off the wheel, and then unfortunately that's what actually ended up breaking the bone on the outside of the hand. I forget what it's called.
Yeah. Well, Daniel was flown to Barcelona to have surgery on his hand. He will not be back in the car for Monza, but Christian Horner says maybe in Singapore. So Lawson will be back next week.
Yeah, that's got to sting for Ricardo. But fair play to him as well. It's fair play to him. Taking the hit.
Lawson was the guy they were like. The reason Daniel's in this car is in part because Lawson is somebody that Red Bull wants to bring along, but they were trying once again to not have to rush someone to the front, as it were. So here's the thing. Is there a possibility that we don't see Daniel in an F1 car again? If this goes well, is there a chance that they just move on and just embrace the future?
Yeah,
if it goes well.
I don't know. I think that's a possibility. There's more from this racefans.net article. Christian Horner, being Ricardo's mouthpiece here, strangely, who says Ricardo had several screws and a plate fitted during his surgery. It went well. It was successful because the bone was broken in multiple places, but it was a fairly straightforward procedure. Now it's all about recovery. For a normal human being, that would be a couple of months. For a Grand Prix driver, it's often much shorter. Or is it, right? Like, this could be one of those moments where, it's just a weird injury and they never really recover from. I don't know. Robert Kubica was able to do a lot with basically one hand. And
if they give him a steering wheel that was remotely accessible, he maybe could have done more. Remember, we saw the one-handed version of the steering wheel show up like extremely late in his time in F1, where like all the buttons were laid out, so a single hand could grip them all.
Yeah. We'll have to. I think this must be a bit of a nightmare for Ricardo. And also not ideal for Lawson. Like, this is, Ricardo is talking about how like coming in mid-season's not great. I'm not really, warmed up to physically for this type of action, and be great to like have some time with the car beforehand. Like, Liam Lawson's, unsurprisingly, I guess, he ends up last in qualifying, but like, I feel like your first Formula One race in Zandvoort in the rain is kind of harsh, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And he had
But I
never
will say
driven
this.
this particular car before. He'd driven other AlphaTauris, I think, in practice sessions, but this particular one, he got free practice 3, and then that's it. You go qualify. Rob, did you have something?
Yeah, I would say that, like, regarding circumstances in which you come into F1, this might actually be the dream scenario, though, right?
Oh, yeah?
Because you're playing with house money. Nobody wanted you in this car. This wasn't the plan. This is, this was a situation that came up. Everyone knows you're not ready to do this. And so there's really only performing to expectations or exceeding expectations.
Yeah.
I don't think this is a scenario where he can, like, ruin his shot in the way that we have seen so many other younger drivers ruin theirs, right? Like Nick DeVries comes in, it's like, you better show up and show out, and it's over halfway through. There's just no runway. But here, I think he might get a few races grace period just to get his feet wet.
It's like a freebie.
Yeah, and then maybe he gets a full season next year.
Nick DeVries got that too, and like impressed. Remember his first outing?
Oh yeah.
So
that's
who
a great
knows?
point. Yeah.
Danny, do you want to take us through the start of Zandvoort? This may be one of the heaviest lifts of the season.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to detail it. So, off they go. My like sort of shock at watching the first lap of this is everyone's driving next, like they're already 3 abreast and we're entering this banked section. 2, they are constantly losing the back of the car and having to make dramatic wheel adjustments to correct themselves. And C, basically no one hit each other. The only people who did were Leclerc and Piastri.
I think that's right.
Yeah, okay. And then the other thing we saw was almost, I wish I could place a bet on Alonso overtaking on his own special custom line through that banking, which we remember from the past couple of years. He loves entering high and swooping under and just taking that lovely little low part of the track, which he did to great effect to get up. I think it was past Albon into 4th.
And
Is that
Russell.
right? And Russell, you're right.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. So he just ate them up. Verstappen got away pretty good. And then the cameras, we talked about how Zandvoort is a fairly compact track. Like the furthest parts of the track here are probably closer than the furthest parts of most Formula One tracks. But by the time they got to like the back end of Sector 2, the spitting of, it was like each camera got more rain. It was the whole way, and it didn't seem to stop. And the back of the track was just like, oh no, are they all going to have to come in for inters immediately? And that's what happened with some of them. Well, at least Sergio Perez decided, fuck it.
The answer was yes. I mean, they all needed to come in for inters immediately. It's just that not everyone got the answer right. And I think you'd really say, like, the whole race hinges on this moment, because it's basically coming out of this moment. There are now the race forks into like 4 groups, right?
Yes.
The group that get what turns out to be the optimal race call, and this is going to be decisive for race results, is you do that first lap, you go straight in, you go to inters. And that is like Gasly, Perez, Lawson, Magnussen, Tsunoda, Zhou, Leclerc. Leclerc will put an asterisk by, and we'll come back to that in 1 second. Well, no, you mentioned there was the contact.
Yeah.
Yes.
Leclerc, it's another classic looking botched Ferrari pit stop.
Oh my God.
Everyone else's switches to the inters goes pretty according to plan. Leclerc, we cut to the camera from the front end, and we see a Ferrari mechanic racing around the front of the car carrying an inter because they weren't ready. It turns out that Leclerc made the call himself to come in. The team was not ready. But then the other part of this is the wing damage.
Yes.
And I guess there was some other damage that probably, maybe he was doomed no matter what.
Did you see the guy?
But
What guy?
so there is a guy who points at the wing, right? Are you talking about that guy?
And he's holding the drill, and he's like, he goes to do it, and he's the only one. Like, there's no other person taking the other side off, and there's no one coming out with a new wing.
There's no front wing in the area. I didn't see, like, I don't think they were ready to do a nose swap. But yeah,
he's clearly the guy who's on that side, and that's the side that has the end plates gone. So he goes to do it, and then looks around, and then sort of sheepishly just backs up.
Oh man,
because like, I guess we're not changing the wing. But he was right.
Sometimes you're Denzel Washington in Crimson Tide, where you just got to make the call. You got to do the right thing. You just need to take that front nose off and be like, I'm not letting this man go until we put a new nose on. Yeah. But either way, so like, we'll come back to what that signifies for Ferrari and Leclerc and all that. But so it's Leclerc kind of making his own call. In absence of guidance from the team, the Inter's swap takes a minute, but he still gets back out there. The second group of people are the people who go that one more time around.
Yeah.
And then they can see the writing on the wall. The rain is intensifying fast, and they're going to come in on lap 3. And that is, I think, Max, Alonso, Sainz, and Ocon. And then the group that I think actually had the worst strategy of anyone is the late switch to Inter's group. And they don't all do it at once, but lap 4 or later, you have people starting to be like, I guess we got to call it. We need to switch to Inter's.
Fuck.
Hamilton comes in, I think, lap 5. Norris comes in. I
think it's the same lap.
They're very late, and I think there's a weird radio call there where Norris is asked, can you stay out? And he goes, yeah. Which, in radio call parlance, does not actually indicate to me he affirmatively is making a decision about what strategy he wants to do. But either way, so they kind of like throw it up in the air. He kind of bats it back. He stays out. Stroll comes in late. That's correct. And then Russell also comes in late, but I think he comes in before Hamilton. Hamilton is very late to come off the tire,
and he's angry. And then he's like,
he was, and I think he should have been, because they started him on mediums. And I don't know when is the last moment you can switch while that car is on the grid, but this is Ferrari need to entertain the possibility they become kind of a bad race day team, and maybe just a bad racing team, because like this is. The mediums, the entire premise of the mediums is that Hamilton's going to stay out and he's going to do the overcut, right? Everyone's going to come in, he's going to stay out on those mediums, they're going to come into themselves, and then he's going to cruise. And maybe that's going to work, but the weird thing about Zandvoort is you can stand on the back of the grandstands and look out toward where the weather is coming from and kind of see how this is going to go.
Yeah.
And we know that like softs they have some raceability in the wet. They're soft enough and they retain enough heat, you can kind of make it work. The mediums, that wasn't going to fly.
Yeah.
And so there was no upshot to Mercedes being like, let's let it ride. And then Hamilton gets on the radio and says, we shouldn't be out here on these. And they just tell him, you're going to have to brave this. And then eventually they decide this is too wet, they bring him in. Weirdly enough, the group that does ride it out is Albon. I think Piastri doesn't come in for Inters. Hulkenberg, Valtteri, and Sargent. They all stay out. And the weird thing is, that is not the right strategy, but it does appear to be less wrong than the people who basically came in, took all the hit for running slicks in the rain, switched to Inters right at the point where the Inters really aren't doing very much affirmative good, and then they have to come in for the switch to slicks. So like the whole race is this moment of like the 4 groups that have to make this call, and like there was one really right course of action, and then there's kind of one really catastrophic one. And Hamilton, it's wild where he finishes up given how badly this race started. The one thing I just wanted to throw back to y'all is, I think you'd see the Leclerc situation as like kind of a classic Ferrari blunder. I'm also sitting like, but I don't know fully where I even begin to assign blame, because also he came in, they weren't expecting him.
Well, I feel like we hypothesized this. I feel like we did, and I feel like we did with Sainz, not Leclerc. And again, I apologies to Ferrari fans if they feel like we're constantly hypothesizing around this stuff, but it keeps happening that it's just impossible to not talk about it. But we did say, is there going to come a point when the lack of trust that the drivers have in the decision making is going to make them start like fog of war making calls or not listening to the pit board or to the pit, and then that's going to create problems too. And you could argue that Leclerc sort of going off script and coming in was one of those.
So F1 actually has a couple pretty good videos on their YouTube channel. The first one plays all of the radio from these opening laps.
Oh,
and it's
wow.
amazing how things unfold. You know, drivers like Bottas, who ended up going long, saying, hey, it is definitely intermediates. I think he's the first one to say that. While his team says, no, stay out. Hulkenberg is asked if he can survive 1 to 2 more minutes. He says, we'll see, I guess. And then Stroll's just telling his team to shut up. It's so great. In another video, Julian Palmer does kind of the breakdown that Rob just did for us, and points out that no team called their driver in. Everyone that came it was all cockpit calls. So
that's funny.
I think that puts back on Ferrari being like,
back on Ferrari.
Hey man, why were you ready for this?
You got to be ready.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that makes Perez's call even cooler then, I think. And also what happens to his pits later, even less cool, which we'll get to. Well, I will say one of the funniest, we talk about the Red Bull being on a different level, and obviously this has nothing to do with it, but it was very funny watching Sergio Perez put Formula One on like baby mode and just like overtake 20 cars in one lap. That was the fun. Like I think if you're new to F1, that is the perfect demonstration, because you hear people saying like, oh, there's like a 8-second per difference per lap difference on between the wets or between the inters and the softs, right? But that's kind of a bit hard to like rock in your head. That sounds,
and the conditions are never that black and white.
Right, different parts of the track and all and you don't often have cars on softs when it's like bucketing raining, which it was, and other cars coming out on new inters. But watching him basically just like dance around them like an adult playing soccer against toddlers was just like amazing. Like he was just like breezing past him. It's like that's what it's like. That's the difference.
And I think you alluded to it also, just like that lap 1 where the conditions are getting wetter and wetter. These guys are so good. Like they really are. The fact that this doesn't turn into just like absolute carnage up and down the 3 hours of red flag, 2 straight
F2.
bits of carbon fiber,
and you'll see the difference. Yeah. You'll see lots. I think the Formula 2 drivers did great too. But if you want to see just losing the car randomly, that was happening a lot over there, and it eventually happened in this with Sargent, I think.
Yeah,
he had his crash was a bit of one of those. Something
he
broke
hits
on
a curb. Yes, so he hits a curb and he loses basically like the front axle.
It like breaks.
Yeah. So he breaks one of the wheels effectively, or some of the hydraulics on the suspension, and that's it for him. But yeah, just the last thing I'll say on Leclerc is I do kind of feel like it just feels like a couple that that you're friends with, that like I feel like they'd be happy if they were divorced.
Yeah,
because it does feel like Leclerc has no faith in the pit wall, but they have done nothing to earn faith from him. And like Drew, good God, knowing now that every other team basically knows that it's at the driver's discretion, like in these sorts of conditions, you just got to stand by to go to the alternate strategy that they call. And Ferrari's not ready to do that. And then they see like the battle damage, and they're just like,
and go,
well, I guess we can't do anything about it, because who wouldn't want to have another unscheduled pit stop in the middle of a Grand Prix to replace the front wing?
In fairness, I'm trying to remember in real time. I don't know if anyone reported the broken. I feel like we learned about his broken wing a little bit later. Maybe I'm wrong. I can't tell. Or maybe, and he probably didn't know either. I guess it might be tricky it's a clockwise track, right? And he's turning that way, so I think that might actually
Yeah, but that
less
mechanic
noticeable.
spotted something. I feel is the thing. I feel like the mechanic spotting something and trying to flag it down a little bit is kind of incriminating. I think somebody needs to see that something's going on there. But I guess the other counterpoint.
Just to make they did bring it. Did they bring him in and then put him back on softs? Is that right? Did they give him new softs, or did they actually remember and then swap?
No, he went to inters.
He did. Okay.
Yes, and then he went out. But I think I forget. Did they have to? No, they just ran him with damage. That just got like progressively worse. But I guess the other point in this is Max occasionally raises his hand to offer some thoughts on what they might want to do, and is getting the same thing that we talked about like a couple weeks ago, where it's like, Max, shut up, just focus, Max. And I guess you can sort of see Red Bull just don't want their drivers inputting on strategy unless asked. And you can kind of see the wisdom in that to an extent is if you do set the expectation that strategy calls are coming from the pit wall.
Yeah.
If we blow it, it's on us.
But
it is not your call.
Calls as well, which they did this time.
There's a cleanness to it.
Well, speaking of Verstappen, he was in that second group. Lost 3 places as a result, but quickly overtakes Gasly for third place, who had made up 9 positions with his lap 1 pit.
What do we think of this pass on Gasly, though? Did y'all take it in a little bit?
Yeah, he forced him out a bit wide.
It's aggressive.
Yeah, it was unnecessarily aggressive.
Yeah. It's one of those moments where I'm like, you don't even get the under review type thing, the under investigation moment. Like, it was such a, he sweeps wide and slams the door shut. And to me, it's pretty textbook.
He's like 20 car lengths ahead of him 2 turns later, because Gasly had to basically slam the brakes to get out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, well, Max had demonic pace. That's for sure. But yeah, I'm with you. It's like he trashes Gasly's line because Gasly has to bail out or risk a collision. And I don't know. It's like one of those moments where I don't know. Sometimes I feel like when you're this dominant, they just stop calling stuff on you because it's like, what difference does it make in the end? But it was just so out there that I was just like, surely someone's going to look at this, given some of the other stuff that does get examined.
Well, he passes Zhou pretty easily a lap later on lap 7 for second place, and Perez at this point in first is 11 seconds up the road. More pit stops happen around lap 12. This is when the rain has finally gone. People are going back onto slick tires. It's also when Leclerc does get a new front wing. Doesn't do him much good. He retires later in the race with that damage from contact with Piastri. Apparently, he lost 60% of his downforce.
Man.
I think due to some floor crunching.
And this is a track where you need it. Monza's not, but this is one where you do.
Verstappen, who is in second, is brought in before his teammate on this round of pit stops, who's leading the race, which is counter to what usually happens because, as we see, it's easy for the first stopper to undercut the second. Red Bull said that they did this to cover Alonso. This quote from race fans from Christian Horner. Had we pitted Checo first, they would have both undercut Max, Alonso, and whoever was behind him. So we'd have gone from a net 1-2 to a net 1-4. So we pitted Max first with the risk being that he'd undercut Checo, but we'd end up as a team as first and second. So it was a no-brainer.
A no-brainer. Can you imagine? They only had 50 laps to overtake Fernando Alonso. That's, God forbid, in their rocket ship car, which is faster than anyone else by a mile. Yeah.
I feel like this is Jack Nicholson and A Few Good Men pretending he didn't order the code red, where it's like, and look, here's the thing, like Max kind of wanted to be on inters early anyway, and they told him, stay out there, deal with it, but you don't have to pretend, guys.
Yeah.
Like, we understand. We've seen how Checo's driving this year. Like, Max is the guy. He gets the chosen strategy. You can just be straight. I guess the thing you're avoiding you're avoiding sending the message to Checo. Yeah. But it seemed pretty clear that it was just like, yeah, Max gets optimal strategy.
Christian Horner does not have the time or the inclination to explain to Checo why Max is pitting first. All you have to do is look at the color of the stands around you in Zandvoort.
Alonso said, I would have attacked Verstappen more at the start, but I feared being able to leave Zandvoort.
That's a great line. That's a great
Should we just call it, just to give you a sense of like how some of these pit stop calls played out? Hamilton was in last place on lap 5. Just when all this shook out, like Hamilton was dead last. And Joe up there in second.
Wow. Yeah.
Like the changes of fortune in this, and the people who end up, there was the entire little duel for the lead between Russell and Lando on lap 3 before they both realized that they had no grip and their race was probably on the way to being ruined. But it was very cool, just how all this shook out. But yeah, it's like it was like an early Christmas for a lot of people who got that first call right.
Yeah. Other big movers. Perez moved up 6. Zhou moved up 13 positions.
Wow.
Gasly 9, Tsunoda 9, Tsunoda 9 to 8th place. Magnussen moved up 11 places to 9th. Lawson up 8 places to 11th. But yeah, back to the race though. A really scary moment as Tsunoda nearly squeezes Ocon into the wall. Yeah. This was a real heart and mouth moment. Reminded me of some stuff that we've seen at Spa. Ocon, though, does get by Tsunoda, and Albon follows into 8th and 9th, respectively. And then lap 16, yellow flag, and we cut to Logan Sargent in the wall. And yeah, it looks like, as you said, Danny, he cuts that corner really sharply and said something broke on his car. Dave Robson from Williams, head of vehicle performance, says, we are still investigating the cause of his DNF, but he suffered with a loss of hydraulics.
Right, yeah. He was on the radio pretty quickly saying, what happened? It just wouldn't turn. And you could see on replay that, yeah, it looked like something on the front right was banjaxed maybe. Heavy hit. I bet that
and just
got a nice little number on the G-force meter there.
What a real roller coaster of a weekend for him. I felt bad. He looked extremely dejected.
This was the saddest thing I've seen since Mika Hakkinen was crying behind the shrubs. This was one of the the camera is just the cameraman smells blood, and you're just out there in plain view, and we are just going to drink in this racer's grief. But I am curious, I think they alluded to this a little bit in qualifying, or at least Karun did, but is there a Sergeant Death Watch in effect now? I'm curious. Do y'all feel like Williams seems to still be backing their guy, but obviously they tell you that until they give you the hook. I'm curious.
Yeah. I don't think Williams. I don't think Williams has a mid-season swap in them. I don't think they're that team. No. I think they have enough trouble with figuring out how to get their database software off Microsoft Excel. But I do feel like there is no shortage of Formula One talent. They're in the pool as well as the emerging pool coming from the lower divisions. So yeah, I think if it's not Death Watch for his immediate career, it's definitely they need to see something by the end of this season or yeah, I think he might be in a good bit of trouble.
Yeah, it's tough to know, especially with teams in the back of the field, because you're really being compared with yourself and the capabilities of the car, and really only the team can know that. But you're right, Rob. They have said that he's really coming along. But I imagine they'll see this season out and then do a really really deep introspection.
Yeah, it's tough. It's like he's matched with Albon's a veteran. Albon's become a veteran, and the weird thing is with Albon, I think you can kind of see the benefit of you just let people come back from their early career rough mistakes, and it turns out they can't. Those maybe are not indicators of what the guy's ceiling is going to turn out to be. And most guys just don't get that shot. And I'm not sure Sargent is going to get it either, but Albon did show more flashes early on than we've seen from Sargent. So
Safety car comes out for Sargent. We get a restart on lap 22 with the top 5. Verstappen, Perez, Alonso, Gasly, Sainz. Sainz making moves on Gasly, but cannot get around for now. Gasly, though, also has a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. So his podium hopes look to be, at this point, quite slim. A couple of good moves around lap 31. Tsunoda gets by Zhou for 8th on the inside of turn 1, and 1 lap later, Norris getting by Zhou for 9th.
Wait, did you say who had the pit lane? Not Gasly.
Gasly.
Did he?
Yeah.
No. Press.
Yeah.
Gasly had a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. Yes.
Wow. Wait, I'm confused because the end of this race happens.
I know.
Okay. All right.
Stay tuned, Danny O'Dwyer.
All right. Okay. I think I missed that.
Yeah.
Sure. All right.
I missed that completely. Yeah.
Lap 49, Alonso, another podium hopeful, has a bad pit stop as he goes from soft to soft. It's kind of funny because once you put on intermediate tires, you don't have to change compounds. You can just, a bunch of these guys just went from soft to intermediate to soft, He's stationary for 8.3 seconds, putting him out in 4th behind Sainz. But 3 laps later, Alonso has caught Sainz and gets him down the inside of turn 1 for 3rd place. Lap 55, poor Tsunoda gets passed by Norris and Hamilton in quick succession through turn 1 for 9th and 10th, respectively. And a lap later, Albon attacks Russell around the outside of turn 1, taking 6th place from a Mercedes. And meanwhile, Hamilton gets Norris for 9th.
Coming back.
Yep. Lap 60, Gasly, having served his 5-second penalty, comes out behind Sainz, finally catches it back up to him and gets him around the outside of turn 1 for 4th place.
How about that Alpine, man?
It's looking weirdly good. Just like the Williams is looking weirdly good in this race.
Yeah.
It's really bizarre. I had forgotten about the fact that the circuit is not only so narrow, but the undulation and stuff just makes it look so fast. It makes it look like a karting track. Like they're just darting everywhere.
Racer. It's just like, it's nonsense. And it is tight, but weirdly enough, there are some parts of this track which don't look very tight because they were more than happy to go 3 wide on them sometimes. Maybe it's the speed they're taking. They're accelerating out of corners or something, so it doesn't feel as breakneck or something. But yeah, it's a funny old track, this thing.
Yeah. Lap 62, the rain rears its head once more. Verstappen comes back into the pits with plenty of room to spare, goes out onto intermediate tires, still in first place. Perez pits too, but despite that, goes off the road at turn 1, ceding 2nd place to Alonso because it is now dumping on the track.
Oh my God.
Tsunoda does something similar, followed frighteningly closely by Zhou, which leads to a virtual safety car and finally a red flag.
Yeah, Tsunoda sort of tiptoed over the gravel, and then Zhou was like, "Nah, man, this is how you do it." Zhou,
check this out.
Just like whips straight into the wall.
Did you just give a neum with the word Zhou?
Zhou. Yeah, he's got his own version of it. They all do. I'm always doing Lando Norris's one.
Checo. Yes, Rob.
Oh, I think you're saying Checo, but you were just making a sound effect.
Yeah.
I want the coming rainstorm was one of my favorite characters through this GP of like the constant check-ins with like, and also what a great, I'd actually come back around. Zandvoort is a special place because there's like no other place I can think of where you have such a comprehensive view of what the weather fronts are doing, because like you go high, you're just above like sea level, and you can just see the weather coming in for miles. You see storms like brewing up over the North Sea, and like you swear to God you're about to see like the high seas fleet sail by to go engage Jellicoe for the fate of the channel or whatever. But the thing that really caught me here was that for a minute there I was like, does Zhou cost Ocon the most inspired strategy call of the weekend? The decision to just go to full wets as it just turns into a downpour, all this stuff. But we had a little time to go racing with those full wets. And they did not seem to be doing what Sergio's Inters were doing on lap 1.
No.
Yeah.
Lap 2. And it was one of those moments where I was like, these wets don't seem to really have a use case. It's like they show up and it's like, it's undrivable. And so these tires, by definition, like when conditions degrade to the point where like it's optimal, I guess, to be on a full wet, a red flag's it's coming. Like it's just built in. There's no upshot to it.
Rob, I remember a time when Inters there was like a thin window for what an Inter was.
Yes.
And that seems to be completely lost now. There was a time where Inters were risky, where like Inters were like risky, like soft and mediums are at the start.
Well,
of the
for a long
race.
time we didn't have them. Like you had slicks and you had wets. And then Inters were introduced, and Danny, I'm with you. Like I feel like I remember there was a more of a gradient, right? Where it's like there's the Inter window, but then real quickly you're in the wets window.
And if you're on Inters in the wets, it was like in that type of deluge, it was bad news. Like was you might as well have been on normal tires.
And now it kind of feels that like if the track is not flooding and there's like actively standing water like ankle deep on it, well, that's Inter's weather.
Yeah.
And if you can like paddle a boat down the straight, that's full wet. And
But they're going to red flag it anyway, so don't worry about it.
Right. And also the wets are going to throw so much spray that like it'll be, even if the rain stops, it's too hazardous to continue. So I don't know, like on every front, F1's ended up in a weird place with tires, but I feel like the wet weather tire stuff is sort of the quintessential example of the Inter's like too good at covering too many conditions, and the wet is too good at moving water into places you don't want it.
Well, weirdly, Perez, by the time the red flag came out, was in the pits. He then couldn't exit because the race was red flagged. So that would have put him at the back of the grid when come restart. Thankfully for him, though, the stewards gave him the place he was in when he pitted. So they just kind of rewinded it to
one lap, isn't it? Yeah.
So I had completely forgotten though the Gasly. I remember it now that because I was only thinking about this stuff as like the stewards appending penalties like to be assessed after the fact, and I totally forget that that you'll just have to stay there in the pit. Is when did Perez do the thing?
So I think it was coming in here because he said, and I only knew this from watching the I think it was the pit radio or the race radio video on F1's YouTube channel. He actually hit the barrier, like the side of the pit lane, when he was coming in.
Oh, he did
for this pit, and I think that's what caused him to overspeed, or it was all part of the same thing. So we get the we do a restart, and then with 4 laps to go, we get the message that Perez is handed a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane, meaning that the 4th place Pierre Gasly, if he can stay within that margin, he gets the podium. So we restart. We're looking at that. We're looking at contact between Norris and Russell at turn 11 that earns Russell a puncture that knocks him out of the race. And it comes down to the end of the race. Verstappen winning. Pierre Gasly is within the margin.
Beautiful.
Podium. First time in an Alpine for Pierre Gasly.
Hey, there was a minute there where it looked like Fernando might be able to do it though.
Yeah,
there's a lap there where Max was having to keep that door wedged tightly shut,
fight like a lion,
which was pretty bracing. I don't know if I think I learned that Indy cars do this recently, where they don't actually the speed limiter isn't limiting your speed. It is effectively a rev limiter, and so you have to adjust what tire you're on and what conditions you're on.
Oh, interesting.
Because otherwise, that's how it dials in. Keeps you at the right speed. Is on these tires down the pit lane, these revs produce this speed. And I'm curious if F1 has a similar system where if there's a dial you can fail to adjust. But
it sounded like he couldn't get it stopped in time, and then passed that line at too fast a speed, and then connected with the wall.
In the wet, maybe.
In the wet, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, Verstappen wins 9 in a row, tying the record set by Sebastian Vettel and I think Alberto Ascari.
Yeah, and Pastor Maldonado as well.
That's right. Fernando Alonso comes home in second place, scoring an additional point for the fastest lap. Pierre Gasly gets that podium, and Sergio Perez, with his 5-second penalty, comes home in fourth. Carlos Sainz fifth. Lewis Hamilton making it up to sixth place.
Nice.
Lando Norris seventh. Alex Albon holds on to 4 points for the Williams team in eighth.
Thanks
Oscar
to Russell.
Piastri, Oscar Piastri ninth. Esteban Ocon, the last points paying position in 10th. Behind them, Lance Stroll, Nico Hulkenberg, Liam Lawson, 13th place. Way to go in your first trial by fire Formula One race.
Wait, he overtook Tsunoda? Oh no, Tsunoda crashed, of course.
Penalty.
Yeah.
He got a 5-second time penalty for causing
he
a collision
did.
with Russell at turn 1 on lap 52. He'll finish 15th, Valtteri Bottas 14th. Kevin Magnussen in 16th. He also received a 5-second time penalty for falling more than 10 car lengths behind the safety car.
Oh, come on.
There are rules.
K-Mag's had a bit of a nasty season, but hey, don't worry about it. We'll talk about his new contract in the news.
It's all good, yeah. George Russell, technically classified 17th place, but the DNFs of the race, Zhou Guanyu, Charles Leclerc, and Logan Sargent. As Julian Palmer pointed out in that video on F1's YouTube channel, 89 total pit stops.
Wow.
Which is a lot. And
kept them busy.
Because George Russell did a stint on the hards in the middle of the race there, every compound of tire was used in this race.
Oh, wow. That's great. Oh, yeah, because Ocon threw on the wets, right?
Yeah, and so did Verstappen for a lap before the red flag happened.
Amazing.
Yeah.
There you go. So much for their, trying to not use tires strategy.
Yeah. And so much for the Dutch Grand Prix. That is it for our race recap. We are going to take a break, and then we will be back with the news. And we're back. Welcome back, everyone.
That was a great ad. Don't
Thanks.
you have some stats about our ads, our categories?
I do.
This is fun.
I'm looking at the back end right now. And it tells
We're done
you
with the constructor standings segments and all this. Now we come back on ad performance.
I've got advertiser category performance. I don't know. Again, like I said, like podcasters never talk about this stuff. I as an audience member, I'm curious about it.
Yeah.
Our number one category with 15% of the total, sports.
Sports, that's general. Could be anything. Tiddlywinks to
Media
NFL.
and entertainment, open caret sports.
Wait,
Okay.
sorry. What is it? So is this how people are find? Like, I'm
No,
curious.
these are what kind of ads have been served to our listeners.
Okay. So yes.
Because this is dynamic. There's a catchy name for it in the biz, but they're dynamic ads, so they're placed in line. Second item, snacks and candy.
Oh, really?
10% of the total.
Our audience has a bit of a sweet tooth.
Mhm.
I'm hoping that is mostly Robert Kubica energy drinks.
It is not the only food and drink category. But third place is retailers other.
Other.
Yeah.
So that's watches. That's hot turtlenecks,
I hope
Ferrari
so.
branded jackets. Yeah.
We got a three-way tie between food and drink food
Okay.
and food and drink non-alcoholic beverage. There, I think, is your Kubica drink. Unless
Food and
he's
drink
got
food.
yeah. And then also finance and insurance, auto insurance, 5%.
It's important to have auto insurance, especially if you're
especially for this
Guangzhou.
crowd, I guess.
Yeah.
And then rounding out the top 10, or what is this? The top 8. The classics, consumer electronics and wireless carriers.
Cool. There you go.
Fun stuff.
Snacks, sweets.
That's right.
Sweets. I got 'em.
Speaking of sweet news, Danny, for a couple of Haas boys.
Yeah.
Want to fill us in on our real only news item here before we get to
Gunter Stein has had a rough couple of years when it comes to drivers. So sometimes you gotta just like don't rock the boat. Just like keep it chill. Everything's fine. We're all doing great. None of our drivers, sponsors have started illegal wars. We can just chill out here. Both the Haas boys, Nico Hülkenberg, who is new to the team this year, who's been doing fantastic, and Kevin Magnussen, who has been started 113 times for Haas.
Wow.
As of this recording. They have
They
both
still feel like the
their-
new team. They are the new team. They still feel like a new team.
They do a bit, yeah. He's been in there for a long time. He's had a pretty stable career there. Although he obviously was out of there and also kind of felt like he was on the chopping block for a while. Last year he had a great season, and then I don't want to say it's because he's chilled out a lot, which he has, and he has a kid, and he's gotten a bit older, but he's definitely had a little bit less of look this year in comparison to his teammate for sure. The line here from Gunter Steiner is, we have an extremely solid driver pairing this season. There was no reason to look to change that. So the boys have gotten an extension for next year. Both of them have their contracts for 2024. Bit of a weird season for Haas. I feel like in the sort of roll of the dice we got in the middle pack, they ended up sort of dropping maybe, actually, which is a bit of a shame. Seems like it's on the car side. Hulkenberg's had squeezed a lot out of it, I think, on a couple of races. But it's funny, whenever they seem to do well, or like maybe do all right in qualifying, or maybe get a little bit of look in the race. But then I always feel like once the checkered flag is drawn, they've sort of fallen back down again. You're not getting that like Albon or Williams. Oh, they're kind of up there with Haas. They always seem to drift back out of the points, which is a bit of a shame for them.
Yeah, I think the car eats up tires. I think that's what they're saying.
Yeah.
So
there you go. We'll see them next year.
Congrats, yeah, to those boys. Well, shall we take it to Monza, Danny?
Let's do it. Monza, Monza, Monza. What a fantastic temple of speed this wonderful track is in Italy. Monza is definitely, if you're new to the sport, Monza is definitely one of the more historical tracks. It was hosting the Italian Grand Prix 3 decades before the Formula One, or as we know it now, started in 1950. 1922 was when the first time they had a national race here at Monza. Circuit was built in like 100 days. There's a lot of lore behind it. Often used as a test track for Ferrari and a bunch of other folks over those years. It has a bunch of different configurations over the year. The version that we use for Formula One now has been sort of that way for a long time, but they have a pretty intense bank that if you go back and watch races in the 50s, they were driving on, and it's pretty insane. You can see it under the sort of tunnels. You'll see the cars drive through the bridges. If you glance your eyes upwards, you'll see the banking there.
Or if you go watch, was it Grand Prix?
It was Grand Prix where that crash. Yeah. They do the crash just as he's there. It's wild. You can go watch. I think Top Gear did a bit there once before. It's crazy how high and how banked it is. And it's like, it would be undrivable for F1 cars now. It's all chopped up and stuff. But apparently when you go to the races, you can walk up on it and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. 53 laps, 5.79 kilometers, 3.6 miles. It feels like a short track because there's only 11 turns on it, but it covers a decent amount of ground. Super fast track, lots of high-speed corners. It does have 2 areas where there's pretty harsh braking zones, which is just as well, because without them, it would just be a non-stopper. There's a chicane, which got added a while back, right at the end of the start-finish straight. And then before the Lesmos, you have basically another chicane that's there as well, turn 4 and turn 5. The teams often have their lowest downforce package. It's like a special package that they'll use here because 83% of the lap is done full throttle, so they don't necessarily need much downforce here. There's also like slight bit of banking on some of those little turns. One of the most famous of which being the final turn of the track, the Parabolica, this beautiful sweeping 180-degree right-hander that changes. It has like multiple apexes, like it keeps changing its gradient as you're making your way around. Really opens up near the end, super turn. And yeah, what'd you say?
They should bank it.
They should, yeah. They
Not to
should
kill
bank
the
every
lily, but I think they should. I think Monza needs something for this new era, a little something extra, and
Get rid of
that
get rid of
thing
the
is
bump.
banking on Parabolica.
At the very least, a little wiggle there. Yeah, it's full of like historical turns. Curva Grande, turn 3, big one, of course. Everyone
Favorite name.
knows that. Yeah, I know, big curves, pretty good. Ascari, the Lesmos, you'll get to know them all. 2 DRS zones on it as well. They're both long enough. They could have easily put a third DRS on it. I think in years past they did have that one as well. But am I crazy? Did they have a DRS after the Ascari chicane or after that?
Between 10 and 11.
Between
Probably.
Parabolica and Ascari.
I'll bet
I think
Bernie
they
tried
used
it.
to. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Probably back when they were going ham and adding DRS everywhere. Anyway, at the end, according to F1's website, there's only the 2 of them now. And of course, the one of the most important features of the track, much like Zandvoort last week, is the local fans, the Tifosi as they're known, the Ferrari fans, which will bathe the grandstands in that beautiful red. Ferrari are actually running a different livery and a slightly different livery, I think, but the fire suits, race suits they're wearing have like a crazy yellow style to them, red and yellow. A lot more yellow on them.
They
this
did the
week.
yellow last year too, right? Well, they did.
Did they do it last year?
They did the full yellow car once, which
you're right.
secretly maybe the best sports car color, canary yellow. I'm a big fan.
Jordan baby.
I think it'd be so cool if Ferrari honored their heritage and did just run a special livery, but like, I don't know, like ran a different race strategist and maybe different race engineers to honor the team's history and legacy, and just see what happens. You know, just like maybe change the energy.
Get Bernie Collins back in there. What I've really been enjoying on the on the
especially
broadcast.
this one. That was her time to shine.
Oh yeah,
it was like everyone shut up, get Bernie back on the horn.
Yeah,
you're right. This was a good one for her. How's the weather looking?
Well, heading into the weekend, we've got a little partly cloudy on Friday, but Saturday at qualifying time, quite warm, 78 degrees Fahrenheit or 26 Celsius. Light wind out of the south, but 21% precipitation.
21. All right.
21% chance.
21. I like a spit, maybe.
And temperature-wise, same on race day on Sunday. Wind just a little bit higher out of the south. Precipitation though climbs to 39%.
Ooh, I'll take it.
That's right.
I'll take it. I'm trying to think when the last time we had rain at Monza. It feels a while ago.
Yeah.
Ah.
Heading into the Monza round, we have the Drivers' Championship in a state such as this for Max Verstappen is on top with 339 points. At what point, I wonder, will it be mathematically impossible for anyone else to catch him?
Yeah. Interlagos, mate. No, it's a bit late. Maybe Mexico.
Yeah. Sergio Perez in second with 201 points. That's 201 against 339. Alonso's in third with 168. Hamilton in fourth with 156. Sainz in fifth with 102. And Leclerc in sixth with 99, tied with George Russell.
Wow.
Lando Norris is in eighth with 75 points. Stroll is in ninth with 47. Gasly in 10th with 37 points, thanks to that podium. And behind him, a tie between his teammate, Esteban Ocon, and Oscar Piastri with 36 points apiece. Alex Albon is in 13th place with 15 points. Nico Hulkenberg's in 14th with 9. Valtteri Bottas is in 15th place with 5 points. Zhou has 4. Tsunoda has 3. Magnussen has 2. And then the quad of Sargent, De Vries, Ricciardo, and Lawson with 0. Red Bull Racing is on top of the Constructors' Championship with 540 points. Mercedes is in second with 255. Aston Martin in third with 215. Ferrari's in fourth going into Monza, the Temple of Speed, with 201 points. McLaren's in a somewhat distant fifth with 111. Alpine has 73. Williams has 15 now in their own seventh place. Gene Haas and team are in eighth with 11 points. Alfa Romeo's in ninth with 9, and Alpha Tauri has 3. Speaking of the leaderboards, in our fantasy league, which you can join using the link in the show notes. From the Dutch Grand Prix, we have in third place Maximum Mando. Second place from the Dutch Grand Prix, Never Gonna Leave the Space. Never Gonna Let You Down. And in first, Curb Lickers. But overall, we have a two-way tie for the third spot in the podium between Scuderia Mercedes and Lotus Begin Gentlemen. Second place, Sins of a Catering Empire.
Great.
And number one, Paying the Stroll Toll.
You got to do it.
Certainly do.
If you want to get in the, yeah.
You can join our fantasy league, like I said, using the link in the show notes. You can also send us an email at shiftf1podcast@gmail.com or f1.cool/emails. You can also hit us up on the socials, which are also listed in our show notes. That's us around the internet. Should we take it around the world of racing, Danny?
Let's race around the world. Hey, hey, yeah.
MotoGP is in Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya.
Oh,
for the
great race.
Catalunya round. Formula 2 and Formula 3 will be supporting Formula 1 in Autodromo Nazionale Monza.
Ooh.
The NASCAR Xfinity Series is in Darlington, South Carolina at Darlington Raceway LLC.
Oh, my darling. Oh, my darling.
Oh, my Darlington. Sport Clips Haircut. Let's try this again. It's very long.
Okay.
The NASCAR Xfinity Series race, Sport Clips Haircuts VFW Help a Hero 200.
Oh, my Lord.
Yes. The Motocross Grand Prix is in, oh, wow.
Where's that? Korea?
Afyonkar Hisar Merkez.
Morocco?
Turkey.
Turkey. Okay.
Yes, for the Motocross Grand Prix of Turkey. The IndyCar Grand Prix of Portland is this weekend at the Portland International Raceway.
Is that a good track?
I
Gotta check
think
that
so.
out. I don't know it very well.
Feel like it's not super overtakey.
Yeah. It's not that far. I'm realizing that there's like slim pickings on the West Coast when it comes to Indy and NASCAR, and I'm like,
I'd be there in a heartbeat.
Portland's
Oh,
not
hang
far.
on, you got Laguna Seca.
It's true.
That's true. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. The bitnile.com Grand Prix of Portland.
Thank you.
Thought that was important to include.
Absolutely.
We also got NASCAR.
Where are we at?
Also at Darlington.
Oh, my darling. Every year we do that.
We certainly do. It's funnier
Yeah.
every time.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're racing at the Cookout Southern 500.
Oh, that's the most American one we've had yet.
Danny, your American accent is really coming along.
Thank you. Did you guys watch Daytona, by the way?
No, but I saw that crash. Oh my God.
Boy. I can't believe he walked away from it. Absolute monster. Yeah. Yeah. A couple of it was a crazy one. It was interesting because Bubba needed no one new to win to get into the last qualifier for the postseason.
The playoffs.
Yeah. So I won't spoil it, but it was really down to the wire. Yeah, and that crash was crazy. He flipped like, I don't know, he
10
barrel
times.
rolled. Like, yeah, it was bad. Yeah. And the car went on fire. And it looked like it was upside down, but what had happened was the bonnet had broken and spun around. So it looked like he was head down. So everyone was like rushing there. And then they had a reverse angle and the car was actually on its wheels, but the bonnet from the initial shot had just like looked upside down. So it was like, okay. It wasn't so.
By saying bonnet, you just completely undid all of your American.
Oh, my American. Damn it. God damn it. Okay.
We better get out there, Hank.
It was the bonnet.
Upside down.
He had to go to the petrol station, didn't he?
Well,
Damn it.
maybe you've heard of Formula One. It's also on this weekend.
Yeah.
Friday, September 1st. Free Practice 1 kicks off at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time on ESPN2. Free Practice 2 is at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, also on ESPN2. Saturday, September 2nd, Free Practice 3 at 6:30 a.m. Eastern on ESPN2, followed by qualifying at 10 a.m. on ESPN2. But the race, everyone, Sunday, September 3rd, 9 a.m. Eastern Time on ESPN.
Woo.
That's what's going on this weekend. What's going on today in history, Danny?
No one's dying in this. I've checked.
Are
I
you sure?
looked.
Maimings.
Although I feel like people almost did. I was watching this live when this happened, and I thought that I was watching because I was young. I think I was 8. No, was I a bit older? No, I was 8. And I was like, is this a live race, or am I watching one of those like worst crashes montages? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That type of thing. So let's get into it. August 30th. The start of any Grand Prix is always the
What
most
year?
dangerous moment. Oh, we'll get to it.
Oh, okay.
Is always the most dangerous moment. But when the whole grid is so tightly bunched up, when the whole grid is so tightly bunched up. On this day in 1998, at the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa, David Coulthard triggered a massive accident in the opening stages in which 13 cars were involved. Despite spectacular carnage, no one was hurt, and after the race was restarted, Rainmeister Michael Schumacher looked to have the win soon up as he raced away from the rest of the field until he crashed into the back of David Coulthard while trying to lap him. Famous incident, that in its own right. A furious Schumacher had to be restrained by Ferrari staff after he marched into the McLaren garage screaming at Coulthard, even claiming the Scot had tried to kill him. This was the famous incident where Coulthard, I guess he saw Schumacher thought he was going to get out of the way. There was way too much spray. He couldn't see him. And then Schumacher basically sort of like overtook way too late, and his wheel came off, and he was driving around on 3 wheels. Pretty crazy. Meanwhile, the racing continued, and Damon Hill took the win, the first ever for the Jordan team, and Damon's first since 1996. To further sweeten the day for Eddie Jordan, Ralf Schumacher came second to make it a Jordan 1-2, although the German was upset he hadn't been given the chance to race Hill for the win in the closing stages. So, good day for the Irish there as well, with Jordan doing the job.
Okay. Well, carnage, but no serious injuries.
No serious injury. Yeah, it was madness. They restarted it and it happened again. It was bananas. There was third cars used. It was absolute madness. It wasn't on the first turn. It was on the way. It was after the turn on the way towards Eau Rouge. They didn't get anywhere near Eau Rouge. They were fucking. You should, if you've never seen this, you should watch a highlight.
I'll see
of
if
it.
F1 has a cut down of the 98 Spa Grand Prix.
It's the cars disappear into the mist, and the new camera angle is just like rain, and then parts of cars coming out of the rain. It's just absolute ridiculous madness.
You weren't 8 years old in 98, were you?
I'm 86. I was born.
Yeah, so you were 12.
I was 12. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I can't add. Sorry. I didn't mention that. Sorry. In Ireland, they don't teach you how to add. I had to move to England to learn how to add. So,
Well, what are your thoughts heading into Monza, Danny? Final thoughts.
hope it rains, Drew.
Yeah.
Hope it rains.
Yep.
That's just my. If we had an AI bot trained to listen to me and come up with podcast responses, that's what I'd probably say, or Nyum or something like that. No, I don't know. I think Monza is it could be I don't know. Straight line speed here is obviously going to help the Red Bulls, but there's a lot. There's
maybe Williams.
The issue with Monza is that there is a lot of high speed. Sorry, there a lot of the corners are high speed corners, but there's just simply not enough of them. There's just not many turns on this one, so it just does end up being a bit of a straight line speed race because of the two straights either side of the parabolic and the one after between Lesmo and Ascari. So I don't know. I think Monza always seems to produce interesting races. I think there'll be a lot of interesting fights happening in the middle of the pack. I'm we've had a random winner here before in the this is where Gasly got his victory. Was it no, Ocon was Hungary, wasn't it?
Oh, okay. Maybe it was Gasly, yeah.
I think it was Gasly. In front of nobody, right? That was the COVID year, I remember. So yeah, I don't know. I always enjoy Monza. I feel like even if it's a sort of a relatively boring race, Monza's just a beautiful track to watch cars race around. So I'll enjoy it regardless.
Cool. Final thoughts, Rob?
Yeah, Zandvoort was a blast. I don't expect anything this incredible from this race due to some of the reasons Danny cited. I think the kind of the most interesting thing I'm keeping an eye on is just there's a lot of teams that have a bit of disorder in their house, both like strategically or with like their personnel lineup. And so I feel like this is kind of a super silly season, and that there's a lot of drivers who need to start making a case for, where they're going to be next year, what their contract negotiation environment's going to be like. And I think there are some teams that really are at a point where there needs to be like a serious evaluation of how calls are being made, where decision making lives, and how those are being arrived at. And so I'm just super curious to see what some of the lessons learned from Zandvoort, how those carry forward into Monza.
If there's one place Ferrari don't want to beef it up strategy-wise.
Yeah. Well, if you'd like to support the show and get access to all of our bonus episodes, the ad-free version of the podcast, and the official Shift F1 Discord, you can do so over at patreon.com/ShiftF1. Have a good race weekend, everyone. We will see you all next week.
Meow.